Welcome to Just Like Nana. I'm your host, Amy Penny Saylor. At Just Like Nana, we talk all things ancestral trauma, why it exists, how it exists, some potential healing modalities for ancestral trauma. I am not a mental health professional, so please be aware of that. What I am, however, is just a passionate curator of information about all things ancestral trauma. So I hope that you will be able to listen to our guests at Just Like Nana and take what you need from the conversation from those guests that resonate with you and ignore the rest. You are the expert in your own healing and in your family line. And what we present at Just Like Nana is never intended to be mandatory. Instead, it's simply information for you to digest as you see fit. Thrilled today to have Amy Pons joining us. Amy comes from a long line of shamans. She's a certified life coach, intuitive energy healer, womanist podcaster, and a facilitator of magic school. Her work is focused on bridging the gaps between strategy, soul, and radical self-remembrance. She is an absolute force for good and healing, and we're thrilled to have her here to talk with us today. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you. I was a 20-year corporate executive until I was like, enough,
Yeah.
enough. And I started remembering that I am magic. We all are. And what I mean by that is that we're all a soul having a human experience, not the other way around, but we're only taught to embrace that we're like only have like what we have in our physical body and that's it. And so
Yeah.
it's just, and I have a philosophy that we come here with a soul blueprint. And of course, we have free will and can override it. And for me, I was reaching the fever pitch in my own life quake when I turned 40. And it was like, okay, you can keep forcing yourself in this other lane, but
Mm-hmm.
you're meant to be out here in the world pioneering the new paradigm. I was like, cool, 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 cool. And this is all stuff I receive as like downloads messages because I now know how to hear my guides and universe and other, whomever you subscribe to.
Yeah.
So exasperatingly, I was like about a month or two out of corporate after I had said today's my last day with no notice. And I was like, just no. And I didn't know what I wanted to quote unquote do, but I know
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to feel better. And I know I wanted to be on the forefront of what I call the matriarchy or inviting back in the feminine energy. And that has nothing to do with gender. That is the energies of which we operate. So I actually refer to it as the new human energy of just, again, remembering that we're a soul having a human experience. And we all chose to be here at this space and time of craziness. So my lawyer was like, okay. And I'd been doing marketing for 20 years. So that was what came easy to me. And so I got marketing clients right away and I became certified as a coach and I got clients and everything. Cool, cool, cool,
Yeah.
cool. All of it. I was like still doing a lot of execution. I hadn't gotten the full message yet, which would lead into my dark night of the soul. I digress. I was like, you know what I want to do? I want to unlock the magic in people that's always been there and that we're not taught to foster. I want to show them how to feel it for themselves and my lawyer was like, so unlock the magic? And I was like, yes. And it was luckily available in my state and I started my LLC and away we go. But that's
Right.
how I created like that's how the because I was like so tired of not saying the thing out loud, which is what I have the innate gift and came here to do and be for people.
Yeah.
So
I love that when it did come through, you just knew, oh, that's it. I just want to take 1 minute to acknowledge how brave you were to leave that corporate
mm,
job and to listen to what was happening inside of you.
I was dying. Thank you for that. I was genuinely dying. I was on the precipice of either drinking myself to death or
Mhm.
taking my own life. So I knew
Wow.
I wasn't going to be around much longer. So I was like, enough.
Okay, there's so much that I want to talk about already, but let's start at the beginning.
Just a little light intro.
Yeah. So we were kind of chatting a little bit before we started, the quote formal discussion. And I would love for you to tell our listeners how you sort of prepared and what the energy you're kind of bringing to this is.
So beautifully in my remembering, and there's specifically why I call it a remembering and not necessarily awakening, but if whatever lands with anybody listening, awakening, remembering, whatever it is, that feeling or that remembrance deep in your bones that comes from a long line of lineage of our ancient ancestors. And I think what's hard is that sometimes we look back, especially me as a privileged white woman, I know that there is elements and things in my lineage that I'm not happy or proud of, but also, and I hold space for the ancestors that did the best they could and did not know any better, and that I am now here to be the cycle breaker from that generational trauma on behalf of them. That includes my immediate lineage, my grandmothers, my grandfathers. I was like this year old when I learned that my great grandma was actually a local, she was like the original entrepreneur in our tiny hometown, being the local seamstress. I didn't know that. I didn't know that anybody in my family had ever been an entrepreneur. So I call on her quite a bit. I'm like, Gracie, come on, help. So the way I prepared is something that I do quite often that isn't like a maybe something that I was poignantly doing it just for this opportunity, but it was something that I tap into. Like my ancestry sends me messages or downloads through my bones or through my DNA, my cells.
Mhm.
And I learned last year that I come from a long line of shamans from Scotland. And there's a,
Wow.
yeah, so like deep, deep, deep. And so that's where I'm like, oh, that's quote unquote how I know how to be an energy healer. Because everybody from my corporate world is like, wait, what? You're a healer? Like, how, what? I was like, well, I was masquerading as a corporate executive. I was always a healer, but I didn't quite know that yet, or I didn't have the language for it. So I know now. And so I share all this with you because the way I navigate my day-to-day life is I call on my lineage, my ancestors, like whomever drops in, I allow them to. And I'm like, ooh, who's that? Hey. And it's not this vibe of like, I hear voices. No, it's not. It's not that. It's a deep, deep knowing or this like
Mhm.
resonance with something that I just know is not from my 43 years on this lived experience. I know it's coming from any of them. And oh, by the way, Amy, I have thousands of women from my ancestry surrounded around me at all times,
Oh,
at
wow.
all times. So to prepare, it's just kind of in me. It's really beautiful to be able to feel that. I'm grateful to feel that really all the time.
Yeah. So I want to ask specifically about your grandmas just because, this is just
Sure.
like Nana. But before I do that, there's so many threads to follow. I feel like I'm already, okay, Amy, we need to have you back.
I'd love to anytime.
But one question, just because a lot of listeners are learning about their own families, and there are so many different ways to do that. And I'm curious, you mentioned two things, sort of how you explored and found that information. So you talked about learning about your great grandma Gracie, which is
Mm.
amazing, and then also your ancestry with Scottish shamans. How did you learn both those pieces?
So, and her name is Grace, but I call her
Oh.
Gracie because she was real spicy. Oh gosh, she was spicy. And I just adored her and she adored me like we were kindred. So let me talk about Scotland first because that's actually what kicked off more of the conversation around my closer lineage. So do with this what you will, but if you're white, y'all didn't come from here,
Right.
right? Like originate. Like this is not our land.
Yes.
And shout out to the Peoria, the people of the Peoria. That's the land that I currently reside on. So I had this like deep in my remembering and this deep knowing in my bones. And like I wanted to know who was talking to me. And I wanted to know where on this planet is my homeland, like my original. And a lot of people were like, well, it's America. Well, no, I mean the deeper ancestry of it. So
Yes.
I did a DNA test back in the day before there was the data breach and all of that info got leaked out to the world. So careful if you do those now. I
Mhm.
digress. But that's what I learned was that I come from like my homeland and now my throat chakra is getting activated. It always does when I talk about this.
Mm.
That's where I found out that primarily I am English and Scottish. And then I went into, I have a shaman and we went into deep meditation and I asked my Scottish ancestors to step forward and to just anybody. Like, I want to meet one of
Yeah.
you. And her name is Sarah. And she kind of looked like
Mm.
Merida from Brave. So
Mm.
big red curly hair, but also with white streaks like I have. And Sarah stepped forward and she had not like traditional shamanic clothing on per se, but the way I saw her, she was a medicine woman. Like I knew immediately. And then
Mm.
she was the one that really stepped forward strongly. And then she kind of gestured behind her and she showed me the long line behind her of shamans that were generations before. So that's when I was like, oh. So it was both
Mhm.
a 3D like DNA test, and then it was more of the spiritual plane where I was able to meet them. And they were like, this is how you know how to heal. I'm like, oh, cool, cool, got it.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful when you allow yourself to explore that and understand and let what comes through be real and be accurate and not
Yes.
poo-poo it away and being like, ah, am I just no, like when you get into your own deep medicine and have a guide, and now I can do this for other people, when you have a guide that can bring you forth to your ancestors, that is real. So
Hmm.
that's how I learned about that line. And I
Love
actually
that.
brought that to my parents because I said, did you know we were from Scotland? And or somebody's from Scotland. And they're like, "Whoa, no, I didn't know that." So they went on a deep quest into the genealogy of our families and everything. And it's kind of hit a roadblock because my dad's great grandpa was dropped off on a doorstep and we have no
Oh,
idea where he
wow.
came from. So we have like this big gap and like we don't know who he is or what he came from. So that's
Yeah.
it could have been him, could have been somebody, we don't know. But in those conversations, my dad said, you know what's interesting is we found out Grace was a local seamstress and she kind of ran her own little business. And I'm like, what? Because we were all thinking that I was like kind of the first entrepreneur in the family. And I was like, oh, Gracie was. Okay. That
Mhm.
makes sense because I wonder now if she was, we're just so similar. Spitfire, so loving, like a healer and a warrior. That's really what we are. Not that she pursued those necessarily, like, but she had a little gig and served the community. And I was like, yes, queen. So those are
Yes.
the ways I got curious about where my bloodline, and I want to go to Scotland someday and like feel the ground and see
Hmm.
what my DNA lights up with. I've been to UK, I've been to England, and I definitely feel something different there. So I had an inkling, but I definitely want to go to Scotland from the healing perspective. But that's me being curious about my actual bloodline. Yes, I was born here. Yes, like almost every generation I know of was born here, but that's
Yes.
not, again, where we originated. So,
Right. Wow. Love that. And I hope when you're in Scotland, and I'm sure this is your plan, bare feet on the earth.
yeah, there's no other
Feel
way.
it. Yeah.
There's no other way.
So I would love, I know we've talked about Grace a bit, but if you have a story or a couple stories you want to share about a grandma or more than one grandma, I
Yeah,
would love to hear those.
absolutely. So I'll switch gears to Dorothy and to Joanne. Joanne is Grace's daughter, and my mom is Joanne's daughter, and I'm
Hmm.
my mom's daughter. And Dorothy is my dad's mom. So growing up, it was really, it's so, so fascinating. And anything I share about them, it's with so much love and never judgment. It's a fact of both their lived experience and what I experienced as being in their energy field.
Yeah.
So, growing up, Dorothy was not what you might classify as like a warm, loving grandmother. She
Hmm.
was more stoic. She was more serious, if you will. She was more structured. She was just a different grandma. And what was hard is my mom didn't get along with her. So she would
Mm.
always, like, I heard words like cold, boring, judgment, like from my mom, my
Hmm.
entire childhood about Dorothy. So there was something about me as a child that probably felt a little bit more biased about like, oh, I don't want to stay at Grandma Dorothy's. I want to stay at Grandma Joanne's because she's more fun and blah, 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 you know. So
Yeah.
now I've switched to Joanne. Joanne was more of that, I don't know, stereotypical, like cushy, fluffy, big loving grandma
Hmm.
that was like fun. We would play games. The vibe in her home was cozy and oh, and I didn't restate it. My ideal state in life is cozy, and that's what I set out to feel today. And I completely created it for myself, which I'm so excited about. So at Grandma Joanne's, it was cozy, loving, warm. And so it just felt different between the two homes. And of course, that was my mom's mom. So there was a lot more, I don't know if there was like preference or bias as well. And my dad's family is just different. What's interesting is now being an adult and looking back, Joanne is this beautifully loving grandmother who is a narcissist, was a narcissist.
Mm.
Everything was about her, even though she exuded this. And then Dorothy was more of a reserved, stoic, and brilliant wayfinder in the world of as an adult.
Hmm.
And I came to like realize this as an adult, especially when Dorothy was like the key person that when I had the opportunity to move 4 hours away, first time like in my either side of the family ever to leave my hometown, Dorothy sat me down for lunch and said, "You've got to do this."
Wow.
And with so much love and poignancy and like and we just, she lost her husband at a my grandpa died at a really young age. So she had 5 kids
Mm.
on her own and she built this career and she's the woman that I aspired to be back then. I didn't know that yet. And so she and I became very close in that realm as I got older. And Joanne and I distanced more because she was the one that said, "Don't you dare leave me. Don't you dare leave the family. You have responsibility,"
Oh,
like that kind of stuff. So, and I don't speak
yeah.
ill of Joanne. It's just those were the two. It was like literally the polar opposite. And
Right.
through Dorothy's eyes, she's like, "Don't you dare stay here for any of us. You better go out there and stake your claim in this world." That's me talking. That's not how she talked. And then come to find out now, Dorothy is one of my guides who is always above
Oh,
my left shoulder, and she beams white light into my crown. She's the one helping me navigate. She's the one that gave me strength to say today's my last day 3 years ago. She's the one. So
yeah.
Dorothy is like at the helm with me, which I've learned since then too.
Beautiful. I have chills. It's amazing. And so much of what we talk about in Just Like Nana is this is never a blame game or, oh gosh, I have to carry this because someone in my past didn't break this cycle or deal with the effects of this trauma and now
I
it's
mean,
been
that's
passed on.
that's actually truth though, that the trauma gets passed on to us, but it's not of like a fault. It's like it's passed until there's a generation that comes along that can actually heal it. And a lot of where we're seeing that right now is like ex millennial and Z women.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. And recognizing that part of the reason we're set up to break that cycle, heal that trauma, is that we have more resources and we're farther along. And part of being farther along is based on the sacrifices that those ancestors made. So the point of all of that is just really, we always want like an open heart and an open mind about our ancestors. And I love your story about your grandma Joanne and your grandma Dorothy because it just shows that things aren't one way. There's always a
Mhm.
broader, bigger story.
Yeah, and there were moments upon my like along the way where I would get so frustrated with my mom for speaking so ill about one of the grandmas, because
Hmm.
but that definitely drove distance early on with Dorothy and then I was able to build like a voice and opinion of my own. It just shifted. It all shifted and I became closer to Dorothy toward the end of her life and less toward Joanne because Joanne also I mean, like I said, I'm drinking her coffee, which is a lot of 2% milk and a lot of sugar.
I love
That's how she
that.
drank coffee, and that's how I would have it at her house. But it was, it's cozy. Like Grandma Joanne was cozy. Absolutely. She
Yeah.
gave me the foundation of what it feels to be cozy. Like literally, I think that's what she would always say. Like, let's get our sakis on. Let's get a blanket. Let's get pillows. Let's get cozy. That's something I probably say at least once a day, if not more. Like, let's get cozy. That's
Right.
my ideal state in life. And that was just not Dorothy's vibe. We would
Yeah.
go to Dorothy's house and everything was like really clean and put away and structured. And so it wasn't as cozy, just wasn't.
Hmm. I love that story that you prepared your grandma's coffee because that's actually, and you don't know this because you haven't listened to the intro yet, but that's part of what I say is grab your favorite cozy drink. Maybe it's something your
Yeah.
grandma made. So you knew you had that knowing. Okay, let's transition to your work because there's so much to talk about there. Although I could just continue to talk about your family, but talk to us about Unlock the Magic. What is it
Mm.
that you do? I'm just going to leave it that broad and have you describe it because your words are so eloquent and beautiful.
Oh, thank you. So, Unlock the Magic is really a business and a movement toward helping humanity turn back inward, not from an ego place, but from a soul place. And why I position it that way is that we are in a place where we've created a disconnection within ourselves in the effort of pleasing outside of us, which has created this really wild cycle around never feeling good enough inside and leads us wanting not only more, but something, this aching, this pain of wanting something more, but not being able to access or touch it. So, Unlock the Magic is about I'm a certified life coach, and I'm also, well, 20 years in business, so I know where a lot of people are at right now. And then also, I'm an energy healer. So, everything that, and all my clients know this, but you can come to me just for career or just for life or just for personal anything. And at some point, we're probably going to get into energy at some point to be like, oh, I feel so stuck today. Where do you feel that in your body? Drop down from brain, get into your chakras. Like we go through and we move the energy. So
Hmm.
that's the way that I am an energy healer. And I think you'll probably see a lot of healers say this. I'm guiding you. You're doing the healing for yourself. I'm guiding you how to do that. And people will be like, how'd you know how to do that? I'm like, again, yeah, I'm a certified chakra healer, but it was always in me. I felt probably in this time and space that I needed, quote unquote, to get a certification to kind of showcase or like credibility, but it's just something that I have always known how to do. And when I was in my corporate role, about 5 years before I left, I was the head of the Women's Employee Resource Group, and I was starting to coach hundreds of women. I was starting to read energy. So like I would sit down with someone and be like, "Oh, you don't want to be here anymore, do you? Like corporate?" And she was like, "Did someone tell you that?" And I was like, "No, I'm reading it from you." And then I learned, I was like, oh, maybe I should give a heads up to people before I do that. So that was an important learning about consent and things like that, about reading, because just because I can read all energy does not mean I need to or should. So boundaries, energy, consent, everything.
Right.
So through coaching and healing, that's what I'm literally doing, both one-to-one and in group, is helping you feel what your heart and soul already know, and that your brain is going to potentially keep at bay because it's not something that's familiar or quote unquote safe. Brain is not meant to keep us happy, it's meant to keep us safe. And
Right.
so it's just working within your energy to see, okay, who's talking when you share something. So what that looks like is I have, again, one-to-one coaching, group coaching, and then also I created Magic School last year and launched that. It's an 8-week program
Hmm.
for those who are starting to remember their intuition, but want more tools or guidance or structure to help them amplify that or help to nurture or practice it. And so we go
Yeah.
through 8 weeks based on clairs, chakras, and elemental magic to get back into the nature and into your soul of like, what do you feel when you see this incense smoke? Like that's
Hmm.
an exercise, like just getting that
Yeah.
and allowing yourself to trust what comes in first and not poo-pooing it away.
Do you see, and if your work doesn't focus on this or you haven't, sort of dived into this, that's perfectly fine. But do you see the brain as connected to the nervous system? And how does the nervous system kind of, because that's when
Mm.
you talk about being safe. And immediately when you started talking about your perception of your grandma Dorothy as a child, my immediate reaction to that was Grandma Dorothy was keeping herself and the people she loved and her world safe.
Yep. And Joanne was a little leaky in her energy with no judgment. Absolutely. There are many people that feel that a stable nervous system or a regulated nervous system is not an ideal state. And I actually disagree with that because I am able to bring my nervous system to neutral every single day. And I can feel the moment something triggers in my body
Hmm.
that it's like, oh, it's like heads up. And it's either something from my own energy or like a message or download I'm getting. So to answer your question, absolutely. And that's where you get to create, because we haven't been necessarily taught this. This is where we foster discernment. When your nervous system goes wonky,
Yeah.
is it in your body? Do you feel it in your body or do you feel it from brain? Because that's what will help you discern. Is this something that brain is sending a panic to me about because it's unknown? Is it true that I can't do it? Or is it true that it's just I don't know enough about it yet? That's what gives way for you to consider doing something differently that brain's going to continue to hit panic on, but it's allowing your brain and your body to interact with each other. A lot of times they just one or the other overrides the other. That's not
Right.
the vibe. We don't want to override anybody. Everybody gets airtime, as I say. So it's considering when you feel and seriously, the how is to get really good at understanding who's ringing your doorbell. And by who, I mean like where in your body. Is it your
Yeah,
brain? Is it something within? Because here's the thing, if your nervous system goes wonky based on something that your sacral or solar plexus feels, that's a, hey, stop. That's like your gut instinct, your intuition that you're like, that something's not safe.
I love
That's,
that.
I mean, and I'm not suggesting that like what brain sends is not real. Of course it's real. It's just you get to discern whether it's something based on what you've learned or something that you truly believe in your truth center.
Right.
That's how you know the difference.
I sort of, and I don't know if this is a fair distinction, but sometimes how I kind of think of it is the brain tells stories and the brain has all sorts of stories. And there are our own stories. There's stories we've been told by quote society. I mean, they're just it's stories where that kind of gut chest intuitive feeling is it's bypassing story. It is
Yep.
just goes to truth.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Can you imagine a world in which we all led from our body, like our like felt sense, our knowing, and not from brain? And it's not that brain's not useful, not by any means, but it absolutely is. It's that there's a reason why people have probably had this at least once in their life where they were like, I just knew I shouldn't do that. I just knew it.
Hmm.
That's not brain.
Right. So in your work, you focus on and you talk about sort of remembering who we are.
Mhm.
And can you talk about what that means and then how ancestral trauma, ancestral support
Mhm.
sort of plays into that?
Yeah. And I'm going to get real deep here for a second. So, and one thing I want to always share is that sovereignty is the ultimate goal. So, getting back to something that you personally believe and know is your truth, meaning as I share what my truth is and what I know to be true, it doesn't mean that it's a universal truth and everybody should just be like, "Oh, cool, that's the truth. Let me write that down." Nope. If it doesn't land with you, put it away. Put it down.
Hmm.
So for me, I believe that there's a soul plane, and it's kind of like the movie from Pixar, Soul. Like we're all hanging out on a plane as souls, and there's no good or bad, right or wrong. Everything's just neutral. And
Hmm.
because of that vibe, our soul wishes to go experience other planes to be able to expand and to have reference of those parallels, because everything just is on the soul plane. So it may or may not be true that on the soul plane, everybody in your soul family kind of comes back with you as different people or
Hmm.
different folks within your life experience. And you kind of, this is why I say, like, I personally believe that we all chose to be here in this exact time and space to be able to note and be part of the massive systemic change that we are leading into this new paradigm of rebalancing the energies. So as a soul, I also don't feel that ancestry, like maybe it's trauma or whatever. The moment I get here, I do a download because I'm born from my mother that picks up all that ancestral trauma and places it like through my DNA blood, as she's carrying me. And then I got here but I did know on the soul plane that I was going to be the cycle breaker. So I chose and I signed up to be that. I just didn't have any context of what that looked like until I got here. And then I was
Hmm.
like, oh. So my philosophy is that we choose these experiences on the soul plane without having full context. And of course, as a human, we're like, why, why would I sign up for this? Why? Uh,
Always the wise.
Personally, yeah, I grew up in a domestic violence home, which allowed me to continue receiving abuse in the workplace for 20 years. That was what felt safe and familiar to me. That's an example of the brain being like, oh, you know this. This is normal. It's fine. And me choosing differently to follow my soul blueprint, which was to step outside of that and heal on my own so I can provide that medicine back out to the folks that I serve. So that was part of my journey. And I could tell you that like I wouldn't have like raised my hand for that, but it was what I was meant to. And so perhaps my soul blueprint was to remember I was a healer. And through the abuse, that's part of how I remembered that I was a healer and I was able to come full circle and expand my soul in that way. Does that answer your question?
It does. And thank you so much for sharing that. It was beautiful. It thank you for being vulnerable because
Oh, sure.
it is hard to share. This is my truth that I am certain of. One of the things that we talk about at Just Like Nana, and I appreciate that you sort of led with that, is there are different pieces of everyone's journey truth, all of it, that is going to resonate with some people and not with others. And that's
Mhm.
perfectly fine. This is not
Oh,
about this is the answer for everyone. It's the opposite of that. Your
it's
soul knows your answer.
exactly. And
Yeah.
we've only learned for the past thousands of years about the copy paste and that you have to fit into the one way. That's what we're reaching a fever pitch at right now, is because we don't want to do that anymore. We actually want to return to self. So that's the flagship of my work. And what I lead people to is like, I can see it and feel it when someone gets an immediate like hit of something. I'm like, what'd you just get? And they're like, well, it's not. I'm like, no, say it, please. And I help them to trust that rather than being like, it's just my imagination. No, like that's your innate. Because we were taught as a young child, probably at the moment we got into school, that's not real. And so I help people return to that. That's what I mean by return to self, is to understand the beautiful both, which is, oh, I have a soul blueprint. And that means that I came here for certain reasons and certain experiences. And also, I'm a human that has free will and I can override anything at any time. And if I keep doing that against my soul blueprint, it's just going to keep getting louder. So it
Yeah.
gets to be the both. It's not like everything is predestined, pre-fated, and it might be, might not, but whatever you subscribe to. But it's like, I know I was meant to remember I'm a healer and my journey has not been linear. So
And do you think, is that where a lot of our pain comes in, is when we're pushing against that truth?
yeah, I'll give a personal example again. Every 2 years, it was kind of a joke. Every 2 years, I'd be like, okay, ready for promotion. I'd get the promotion. And then I would get into the new gig and I'd be like, "Ugh, is this it? Like, I was just so anticlimactic. I'm like, what
Hmm.
is that? This is what I quote unquote wanted. Well, that's the rub. And this is what, okay, manifestation has become really mainstream. And a lot of times, this has been like a really big with the people that I serve the past 2 weeks is like, Amy, tell me what you think about manifestation. I'm like, of course. So the truth is, we are creating every nanosecond of our existence. And it just depends on what we're focusing on as to whether we're creating what we do want or what we don't want, more of what we don't want. And that's where like some of these like lower vibe sayings come in, like, oh, she needs to get out of her own way, or oh, she's creating her reality. Well, it's not that those things necessarily aren't true, but like there's a judgment behind them.
Hmm.
So I will always ask if someone's like having a rough patch, I'll be like, what's your general vibe each day? Like, how do you feel? How does your heart feel? What do you feel about your day to day? Like, what lights you up? What doesn't light you up? We talk about non-negotiables, things like that. And absolutely, you're right. If we keep forcing ourselves to do something that and Amy, come on, we already know. Let's be honest. We already know it's not for us, but it likely checks a box that is around, I don't know, bills, finances, the patriarch, like what we were taught that
Yeah.
means success or means that we how we do life. For me, it was like go to college, get a degree, get a job, retire to Florida, die and pay taxes, whatever. Nah, that's not my vibe. That's not it. And for 20 years, I was in so much pain, and that's why I was a heavy drinker because I was just trying to like survive through it. And I had the big title of money, and it wasn't it.
Right.
So we can continue to hit snooze on the truth, the soul blueprint, whatever you want to call it, whatever resonates with you. It's whatever in your deep knowing, that thread that you're like, and you tell yourself you couldn't possibly do that because you have whatever bills to pay. Okay. You can keep vibing along that road. And because it's not why you came here,
Hmm.
it will likely get to a point where you're either forced out, like there will be something that happens that forces you to course correct or forces you to get on track, and it's not comfortable. So that's where I invite people to consider and just even bring in options. Be like, well, I bring people from I couldn't possibly to I could to I did or I will
Mm.
or I am. That's the journey we go through.
Right. I love that. And all along, of course, that person is fully in their own sovereignty, choosing now I'm here. Now I'm on
Right.
the I could. Now I'm
Right.
maybe on the I could, and this is how it could work.
This is how, yeah. And what's interesting, you said how, what's interesting is the moment we make way for, and this is for me, for the universe to do its magic without prescribing the how, what, when, and where,
Mm,
the faster it comes to us. I'll give you an example. In December, I said, you know what? I'm done wondering where my next income is going to come from. So do your thing. That's literally what I put out there. And like I'm not even a day later, like these opportunities came in
Yeah.
because I did not prescribe. I just said, you know what? Okay.
Yeah. What always resonates with me along this line and sort of, there's so much fear that can grip us and kind of this survival mode and all of that. And it's just watching. So, I mean, I'm so into animals, but just watching, like, we are cared for. We are all just fine. And if we can learn to trust that process a little more and trust our path of this is, I mean, it really is just an energetic exchange. This is what I'm putting out there, and this is what I receive back in return to care for myself.
Right.
But it's scary. I mean, just
It's scary and especially imagine if we were all sovereign in our own energy and having that true belief at the very core that we are fine and that we have everything we need to take care of ourselves,
mhm.
the systems would fail. So there has to be a reliance, and that's all we've learned to be able to become reliant on those systems.
Right.
Which again, I'll reinstate the paradigm is shifting. More of us are out here creating what we do want, not more of the same of the old. And that's why things in the old are getting pinchy or loud. They will. They'll continue to. Your focus should always be on what you do want, not dwelling on what you don't want,
Right.
because you'll inadvertently create more of that.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree and subscribe to that. Thank you so much, Amy. Your time has been so precious. Appreciate it. We will drop all the links of where to connect with you in the show notes. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us today at Just Like Nana. So excited to have you here. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and that you can take away a little piece of something that makes your journey, your healing, your day, your family just a little softer and brighter. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend. Just Like Nana's theme music was written and performed by Carter Penny. Can't wait to talk to you next Friday.